What's up, everybody? Jason from Jason's Exotic Reptiles, back at you another week, another video. I have a special video coming today, and that is the ultimate COCO showdown. I have 4 different brands of CocoBlox or COCO Substrate. I'm going to expand them, and we're going to rate them on some type of criteria. What I'm thinking is how quickly they expand, how much they expand, the fiber content within them, and whatever else I might find that I like or dislike about each different brand. The 4 brands I'm going to be using are ReptiChip, CocoBlox by Freedom Breeder, GAPS EcoSys, which is my new, or GAPS EcoChips, which is my new brand that I'm stocking in addition to the Freedom Breeder CocoBlox, and Prococo. So those 4 brands are the most popular brands. The GAPS, I would say, is the least popular, but I really they sent me a free batch and I really liked it, so I added that to the mix. It's actually what I've been using in all of my cages. I'm going to go into this in a totally unbiased way. I want you guys to get all the information, and I'm excited because I don't think there is any other video out there that compares more than 2 or 3 of these at the same time. So let's dive into the video. What I'm going to try to do is put the COCO substrate in bins. I'm going to flip my camera, show you guys exactly what I'm going to be looking at, but I'm going to put them in these bins, cut open the bags in hopefully the exact same way, and just use my hose on hot water. I'm going to potentially time it, or I might just use the video timer and fill this in real time. That way that you guys can see exactly what I'm seeing. As I've mentioned in my previous videos, why I like CocoBlox over the other 2 that I've been using, which were ReptiChip and Prococo, is the time it takes to expand. However, what I disliked about that in the past were the chunk size, is it's not great for every animal for every cage. So I was exploring different options, and that's where I found GAPS. Years ago, this company sent me a free block, and I was impressed with it, but at the time, I had 2 full pallets of CocoBlox, and I couldn't just completely switch over. I didn't need 3 pallets. There was also the brand and name recognition that I was gravitating towards with Freedom Breeder. I've used both GAPS and Freedom Breeder CocoBlox exclusively up until now. I'm going to do a totally unbiased assessment as I'm getting into these, and I'm going to give you my honest opinion. If I like CocoBlox, I'm going to tell you. If I like Prococo, I'm going to let you know. If I like all 3 and I don't really have an opinion, that's what we're going to do. I just got in some new Freedom Breeder racks, which are over here to my left, and I have more to my right, so I thought this was a great time to be able to fill all of my bins up, and I can do a totally unbiased long-term projection of, does one last longer than the other? To date, again, I've been using CocoBlox for a few years now, and I love them. Just the chip size is starting to get to me. They're a little too chunky. I've mixed the GAPS with the CocoBlox. I've done all different combinations, GAPS by itself. I really like them all, but let's see on a showdown, bin to bin, how much they expand, how much fiber's in them, what's the chip size, does one hold more water than the other? Let's just dive in and see what happens. This is what I'm working with. So I have my 4 bins all set up, and I have my 4 brands of COCO substrate. Full disclosure, my ReptiChip bag is slightly opened, and I'm gonna look at all of these in the bag before I open them. I wanna give you guys a detailed view of what they look like, and I'm gonna expand them all the exact same way. Like I said, I'm not gonna time them, but I am going to let this video run in real time, and I may put some times based on how long it takes to record. So to date, CocoBlox was my go-to. Again, the chip size was getting to me. I used Prococo in the past, but it had a lot of fibers. I don't know if that's going to be consistent. I've used ReptiChip in the past, but it took forever to expand, and I've used GAPS Coco as my new go-to. I really enjoy it, and for the price, I can't beat it. The reason why I've been using this is because it seems to be really almost all chip, but expand a lot quicker. However, I have never expanded all of them side by side, so this will be interesting. I have expanded the GAPS and the CocoBlox together, and the GAPS almost doubled in size of the CocoBlox, so you got a lot more substrate in the same bag. So it's just a matter of the chip size. These tend to expand more for what it is, and the CocoBlox tends to expand less. Let's dive into each bag and see what we can find. first one I want to look at is the Freedom Breeder CocoBlox. I will cut open the bags and we'll get a more detailed look, but you can kind of see the chunk size between here. It's good size. They usually break up nice. It smells nice. I really like CocoBlox. You guys have heard that in my other videos. The next up is we have the CocoChip from Prococo. And you can see this is very compressed. Doesn't necessarily mean it's bad or whatever. It's just, that's my first initial observation. Specifically, when you look at the two side by side, this one's very compressed. And then you have the ReptiChip. As I mentioned, this is somewhat skewed because this bag was opened. When I got it, it was just one of the guys who works for me, he came over and he said, hey, I have some ReptiChip. I like the Prococo better. I'm sorry, I like the CocoBlox better. And he asked to switch it out. So he switched it out, and I thought it would be great for the review. And then this is the gaps. This is the new stuff that I'm using, and it has good sized chips in it, and it looks very similar to the ReptiChip, to be honest. They almost look like the exact same thing. The Prococo is definitely different. It is much smaller chunks, and I will cut open the bags, and the CocoBlox is definitely different. This is the chunkier, and it's the chunkiest, and it's clear when you look at them right through the bag. So let me open the tops, and we'll start taking a detailed look at them from the bags open perspective. I just cut the bags open, and first thing I notice is the consistency of the bag itself. The actual packaging is different from bag to bag. The CocoBlox bag is almost more waxy and seems like a heavier bag. Now, I don't really care about packaging, it's just what it comes in, but I'm trying to be as thorough as I can. This ReptiChip is almost like in between the Prococo and the CocoBlox, where it's a little bit thicker, but this Gaps Coco feels pretty consistent with the Prococo. So I don't know if that makes a big difference to you guys. Packaging, in terms of appearance, I don't know. I mean, they all kind of are what they are. I'm not paying for appearance, I'm paying for what's in it. I would say if I had to rate them on, which one looks the best and which one doesn't, I would say probably ReptiChip or CocoBlox have the best presentation. Gaps, I like the substrate so far and I sell it, but I would say Gaps and Prococo are pretty equivalent in terms of which bag and presentation I like. The ReptiChip definitely has a flashier presentation, and same thing with the Freedom Breeder CocoBlox. The Prococo, again, they're all kind of similar. They're all packaged the exact same way. Let's take a more detailed look at them and the chip size now that they're open. And again, I wish this was a full block because I feel like it's a little unfair to ReptiChip, but we're really looking at what's inside. So let's look at this one first since I'm here. The chips, they do look like, good size. It's a nice range of small specs to larger specs. I don't see a lot of fiber on this, so that's definitely a pro. I don't like fiber because it gets caught in the snake's mouths and it can cause different infections. This is their little pamphlet thing. It has instructions on it, which I like. Premium quality. We'll see how it compares to the others. This is the breeder block, the ReptiChip. There's definitely fiber in here, and I see a lot of it just sticking through this bag. There's certainly chips, and the chip size look pretty equivalent to the Gaps. See if I can do them side by side. They look pretty equivalent, but the ReptiChip does seem to have more fiber in it. I'm going to keep these little labels so we can look at them. This one is just like a dense brick. I feel like this is going to take forever to expand, but we'll see what it looks like. The flyer in here, I guess it has directions, expand dry pieces into, whatever. It has directions. Great as animal bedding, great as gardening, so multi-use. And then the Freedom Breeder, there's no directions, just like the ReptiChip, but the picture looks good, new and improved, powered by Freedom Breeder. The chip size is what I'm used to using. There is very little fiber in this, which I do like, but let's expand them and see how they compare. Before I do that, I want to cut the video one more time, and I want to show you them all right next to each other in a row. So let me do that. One thing I did just to keep track of this for the whole video is I taped the labels to the front of the bins. For the purpose of this right now, I'm just going to compare the 4 of them side by side. So this is the CocoBlox. See if I can get my camera to focus. There's your CocoBlox. And then this is the Prococo. This is your ReptiChip. and this is the gaps. I think those look very, very similar, but we'll see once we expand them if there's any difference. The CocoBlox is clearly different. So you can see from left to right, you have your CocoBlox, your Prococo, your ReptiChip, and your gaps. And they are all about the same size. I'm not sure why the gaps is sticking up higher than the rest. Maybe it is actually just taller. There's nothing in the bin. So let's add some water to them. For the water piece of this, I am just going to be using a garden hose. I'm going to fill them up and we'll see what happens. I probably should, to be totally unbiased, to be measuring out the water, but I never do it that way, and I don't feel comfortable with that because I might be here all day. So I'm going to just use a hose and we'll see what I can get out of this once I rearrange them all back into their bins. Okay, I have my hose. It's fully expanded. It has hot water in it, and I'm going to probably start from this end and work over towards my CocoBlox. I might not be able to talk because my camera's far away, but I want to show everybody in real time exactly what I'm doing. We're trying to make this as unbiased as possible, and we'll see how we go. Immediately, the first thing that I noticed as I sprayed them is the Prococo is absorbing almost no water. The gaps absorbed it relatively quickly, and the same thing with the ReptiChip, same thing with the CocoBlox. So I'm going to do another blast. I was trying to do about 12 seconds of a hose spray per block, and I'm just going to keep doing this, and then we'll get a close-up look. Okay, first thing I want to do is do a close-up. I just did about 30 seconds of a hose spray. I'm going to turn my camera around, or my microphone. Sorry for the static, but this is what I am looking at. I want to do a close-up. This is the CocoBlox. Everything got about 30 seconds. CocoBlox is decently expanded. The Prococo, I noticed, was very difficult to even put water in it. It wasn't absorbing moisture, but it absolutely is now. So maybe that takes a little bit more. The ReptiChip is moderately absorbed. It's definitely expanded. The gaps is very expanded, and it looks like it absorbed all the moisture. It definitely needs another round. So far, I don't want to sound biased, but so far the gaps is definitely winning in this one. The Prococo, I think, may expand to be the largest, since the chips are the smallest and might have been compressed the most. And then the Freedom Breeder is definitely expanded. I can probably break it now. There's still some dry spots in there. Let's see if I can show you this. You can see it's expanded well at the bottom, but there's, you know, no expansion in here if I open up the bag. So it's just the top and the bottom. This one expanded pretty evenly, and I'm gonna still add more water. And this one expanded mostly on the top where I was spraying. So I'm gonna mount the camera and we're gonna try it again, maybe another 20-30 seconds of the hose, and we'll see where it brings us. All right, so I don't know what I just did, but we can rewind the video and figure out what exactly happened. The CocoBlox appears to be at its saturation point. There wasn't a ton of expansion. That's kind of why I started looking at different brands. The price is pretty expensive, and that's something I want to note on all these. So the CocoBlox, I believe, is around $35 a block right now, $30 to $35 a block. The Coco or Prococo, I believe, is somewhere in the $25 to $30 a block. The ReptiChip is, I want to say, the most expensive, is, again, current price right now, around $35 to $40 a block. Maybe you can get it cheaper. And then the Gaps Coco, I don't know because I've only bought a pallet of it. So I'm assuming it's somewhere in the $20 to $30 a block, equivalent to the Prococo. I can tell you right away, I really do not like the Prococo. Maybe I just need to give it a chance to expand, but the expansion was terrible. Again, I was hoping, because it's one of the cheapest ones here, I cannot see myself using the Prococo. Maybe that will change once I split this block up. The ReptiChip expanded nicely. You can see there's still some dry spots here. There's water in the bottom. It expanded nice on the top. I can't really bash it yet. We'll see what happens when we expand it. And then the Gaps is just like a beast in this. I don't want to sound biased because I do sell it and it's something that I use, but this one just totally, I mean, the expansion on that is ridiculous. And I'm just going to go side to side. This one is starting to expand, and that one, CocoBlox, I mean, I sell CocoBlox too, so maybe that's where the unbiased piece comes, is that one is totally letting me down. I mean, they all got the same amount of water or very close to it, and you can clearly see the expansion of the Gaps is much better than all of these. There's actually no water on the bottom. This one, there's still, I think, a little bit of water on the bottom. You can see it's just kind of floating there. This one, I really, again, I don't like the Prococo. If you like it, fantastic. Keep doing you. And then the CocoBlox, again, it's still dry. Maybe we'll give it another blast of water and see where they all go. gonna take one more look, and I think it's time to split these. The CocoBlox is clearly saturated. It cannot take any more water without being expanded. The Prococo does look like it can take more water. It's certainly taken a lot of time to expand, and I do have hope that this may expand to be the highest amount, so the highest yielding substrate out of the 4 that we have here, but we'll see what happens just because it was so compressed. The ReptiChip is definitely at its max. You can see free water just floating in the bag. This cannot take any more unless I break it apart. So you can see all that moisture in there. And then the gaps is, I think, pretty much in the same situation. It's actually, I can't flip it. It's starting to explode on the bottom, but there's a little bit of free moisture in the bottom. So I'm gonna spin them around and we'll cut them open and see what we end up with. I may add a little bit more water, and I'm gonna try to do this all live. I know the video is a little choppy, but I don't want you to think that I'm doing anything that is going to try to bias one versus the other. That Prococo is certainly expanding. Let's just take one more look at all of them from overhead. There's the gaps, there's the ReptiChip, there's the Prococo, and there is the CocoBlox. They are all out of the bag at this point, and I'm gonna see what I can do to break them up with one hand. Before I break them up, I wanna show them all off to you guys. Again, here's your CocoBlox, very saturated with the amount of water I added. There is our Prococo, which is really, again, expanding nicely. That is the ReptiChip, that expanded really nicely once I took it out of the bag. And this is our gaps, which still actually has some dry spots in it and expanded to the point where it exploded. So out of all of them, again, I do think the gaps is yielding the most, but I have hope for the Prococo, and I was very surprised once I took the ReptiChip up how much it just blew up, but I still don't think it's yielding as much. Let's break them open and we'll see what we have. I'm gonna start with the CocoBlox. I'm gonna move my hose. I'm gonna keep the hose handy in case I wanna add more water. I mean, this just crumbled apart. That's consistent with what I've seen. And just gonna mix it around. Still has a couple dry chunks in there, but for the most part, this is ready to go. Maybe a little bit of too much water. I do wanna mix them thoroughly. That's the only thing I might do. I really wanna chop this video up so I can give you a good video, and I wanna mix them up thoroughly before I kind of show the yield off, but let's see what I can do here. This is our Prococo. It broke apart nice. It definitely is still intact because there's smaller chips. I mean, this is a whole chunk. I think this can continue to take on a lot more water. I'm gonna need 2 hands to break that one apart. This is our ReptiChip. It certainly cannot take on any more. There's a puddle of water in it. It broke apart real nice. That's something I can say. There are some fibers in here. This one seems to have the most fibers, and it's certainly chunked up together the most, which is why I think this is going to continue to expand if I add more water. The ReptiChip is maxed out in terms of water limit. This is saturated. I could probably, so I can't wring water out of it, so that's probably the right consistency. There is a little bit of dry spots here, but I actually think that will probably absorb itself out a little bit more. And then here's the gaps. This one's expanded definitely the most and has a lot of dry chunks still in it. They all seem to have this, you know, random pieces of yarn and stuff in it. So I guess that's another criteria, is how much extra garbage it might have in it or extra components. And I am struggling to do this with one hand. So what I'm going to do off camera, I just want to be clear, this is my initial breakup. They are all pretty similar. This one is fully broken apart, so it looks like it has the most. This one can take a lot more water, and I really want to expand this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the camera on the tripod. I'm going to finish expanding these like they should be, and I'll fast forward that component of the video because I don't want anybody to think that I'm adding more substrate to one than the other. Okay, here is the final showdown between all of these. I have my opinions already, and I don't even want to use some of it. I may just throw it away. So this is the CocoBlox. One thing I can say, these chunks are nice. It's all big, solid chunks of cocoa. Very, very little fiber in here, and it's really good. I can't knock it. However, this is the lowest yielding. You can see how much extra space is here on the bin. There's probably about 5 inches. It really didn't expand. It just broke apart and maybe had a little bit of expansion. So, con, pure, nice, or I should say pro, is that it's pure, it's nice and clean. It has nice large chunks. It smells good. They all smell about the same. This one does seem like it smells, you know, the most different, but it's certainly big chunks, not a lot of little chunks, which is why I switched away from it. As I mentioned, the problem with that is it doesn't really trap the urates and stuff. It just seems to like keep the snakes off the cage floor. So that's the pro and con of that one. The other con is it's not very cheap anymore. Prococo, I hate it. I mean, if you like it, again, I don't want to bash it, but it's just tons of little fibers and little tiny pieces. I'm not even going to use it with my snakes, and I'm not saying don't do it for you. Whatever you want to do, do it. But there's just tons of little fibers everywhere. I mean, all of it just is like fiber and little chips. I had high expectations for it. It did yield nice. I didn't even like touching it. It's getting all over my hands versus this CocoBlox. I really like the CocoBlox. But yeah, in terms of fiber, it's all fiber. With some chips in it, and it didn't look that way. I kind of thought it might have been the most fibrous, but if that's what you're going for, if it's certain species that's what you need, by all means, use it. ReptiChip, I was kind of surprised it didn't yield more. It looked like it was going to yield more. You can see the difference between the 3 right there or the 4 right there. It didn't yield as much as the others, but again, I was somewhat biased that it had a block in it. It also has a ton of fibers. I don't like fibers. It gets caught in the snake's mouth, and I'm a little disappointed because my first block of ReptiChip didn't have that many fibers. It certainly had fibers, but not as much as I see here. All this stuff is not what I want in my substrate. It was broken open, so maybe we'll give it the equivalent yield to these others. And then let me check out the gaps. The gaps is, in my opinion, a nice medium. I mean, there are fibers. There's some here, but for the most part, it's a lot of chip. So you look at this, see if my camera's focusing. Look at that. We'll look at this one, a lot of fiber and stuff in there. Look at this one, it's basically like I just grabbed a whole mat of fiber. And then look at this one that almost has no fiber. It's just all chunk. So I'm gonna do that one more time. CocoBlox, Prococo, ReptiChip, and gaps. So I'm going to show you guys the labels again. There's your gaps. There's your ReptiChip. There's your Prococo. And there is your Freedom Breeder CocoBlox. I will flip the camera and let's do some closing remarks on this. I know which one I like. I know which one I don't. I actually think a nice blend would be taking your CocoBlox and blending it with your gaps. This is terrible because I feel like it's a biased video, but I gotta be honest, it's not. It's just my honest opinion. If it sucked, I wouldn't tell you. I am really disappointed with the yield of the CocoBlox, but I really like the chip size and consistency. It seems very clean and pure. I dislike this Prococo so much that I may not even use it. I may just throw it away. I probably will throw it away or give it away. And then my ReptiChip, I'm kind of in the same boat. I just really don't like all those fibers. I'm probably gonna throw it away or give it away. And then my Gaps Coco, I really like it. I have it in my cages now. So let me flip it. I'll give you my closing remarks. That's it, guys. I just took you through 4 different brands of Coco. I know what I like. It kills me to do it because it's the 2 brands that I use, and I was actually genuinely hoping that I was going to like the other ones. That way it didn't seem as biased. I gotta be honest, the CocoBlox from Freedom Breeder was underwhelming for me, and that's what I use and that's what I sell. However, I really like the Gaps, which I also use and sell, but there's the but, is I may take the 2 and blend them together. I've said in many videos, I wish that the original blocks that I got got from Freedom Breeder were well graded. They were almost like a mix of the two substrates. I can essentially do that. I can take a block of CocoBlox and a block of the gaps, mix them together, and I have nice clean substrate with little fibers. The ReptiChip and the Prococo really let me down because this is the second or third time that I've expanded them, and I was let down the first 2 or 3 times that I did it. So they did expand nicer than my last one, so I can't knock it on that. In terms of expandability, I would say your CocoBlox wins hands down. I know I can break that up dry. The ReptiChip is probably equivalent with the gaps, and your Prococo comes in last. That one definitely took the longest to expand, was the most difficult to expand. Even as you saw, I was trying to break it apart with my hands. I spent a lot of time doing that, which is why I was expecting a high yield. I'm okay with taking a little bit more time expanding it if I'm going to get more bang for my dollar, but I didn't get that, and it was just equivalent across the board. So from expandability, CocoBlox wins, gaps and ReptiChip are about the same, and Prococo comes in last. In terms of price, CocoBlox and ReptiChip lose. Those come in last. Gaps and Prococo come in first because I think they're about the same price. So those are certainly up there. In terms of chip sizes versus fiber, if you want the largest chip size, you are going to go with your CocoBlox. If you want the medium chip size, go with your gaps. If you want the kind of about the same size chip size, which was kind of surprising again, was the Prococo and the ReptiChip. Those two together looked really equivalent. If I switch the labels, I don't know if even the manufacturers could tell. So I would say those are equivalent. In terms of fibers, there's almost no fibers in the CocoBlox. There are some fibers, but not a lot. It's primarily chips in the gaps. And then in terms of the fibers, I think ReptiChip is maybe a little bit less fibrous than the Prococo, but overall, they're pretty damn equivalent. So if you don't want fibers, avoid those two. You're going to get a lot of fibers in them, at least in the blocks that I have, which is the only thing I can go on. In terms of long-term longevity and use into cages, I cannot judge that in this video, at least for the two that I have. And I may have to just use them. So I can do a repeat video on this, a follow-up, and I can give you my no BS real answer to which ones are molding, which ones are not. I can tell you from my experience over the past few months that the gaps is really good with mold. The CocoBlox was really good with mold, but this latest couple batches I've been getting terrible problems with mold. Everywhere from, you know, the white fuzzies to black mold on a couple blocks that I expanded, and I really didn't like that. Again, this is all why I was looking for new block distributors, and I'm still going to carry it because it was just a handful of blocks, but I was a little disappointed. I contacted Freedom Breeder, and they're like, must be on your end. I'm like, it's definitely not. I've expanded hundreds of blocks of this stuff. So the response to that rubbed me a little bit of the wrong way. I can't knock them. I had a whole pallet of this stuff, and I'm selling it, so I needed to always make sure that my customer was not getting the same thing that I was. Unfortunately, they were not. So with all that said, I'm kind of, every time I go to the Freedom Breeder, I'm checking that off. I just bought brand new Freedom Breeder racks. I'm not bashing them, but I can say I was a little disappointed with the response that I got on their CocoBlox. I still like their substrate, but I got some mold issues, and there's no doubt about that. I'm not going to deny it. So use it at your own risk. There were a handful of blocks that I got it. Most of them were fine, but I was still disappointed that I can't stand behind everything that I'm selling. So haven't had that issue with gaps. Could be coming. Maybe it's the next block I expand, but so far so good. In terms of mold, I haven't seen any mold issues from the gaps. I will do a follow-up video, and again, I'm just going to have to use the Prococo and the ReptiChip. Maybe it'll last a month, maybe it'll last a year. I don't know until I put it in my cages. So, with all that said, I appreciate you guys watching, subscribing, liking. Please do all that for this video. The more you like, subscribe, the more you thumbs up this video. Even if you thumbs down it if you don't like it, it's going to help this channel grow. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was unbiased as much as I could be, and I hope this helps you make a decision. Drop a comment below. If you're not subscribed to my Patreon, go check it out. I am trying to make a whole different community that we can all support each other. So go check that out. It's starting out to be something really cool. And in addition, join the community chats. They're super cool. We're trying to get a community of people that can just support each other. If you make a YouTube channel, I'm going to like, share, subscribe. my camera just died. What I was saying is go to the Patreon, join those community chats. I think it's at the $25 tier, so it is kind of pricey, but give what you can. If you don't feel like giving, then don't give it at all. Patreon is really the reason why I'm staying consistent with these videos, is because it shows me you guys are interested in them. So, but in addition, I want to make sure that I give you guys value. So if you find value in that, make sure to join. If not, it is what it is. I'm not going to judge you. Everybody is doing their own thing. So with that all said, until next video, until next week, I appreciate you guys watching. Keep it moving.